Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Define Disaster. This is Battlefield 4. In today's weapon duel, we're going to be taking a close look at the Scar H assault rifle and the Ace 52 CQB carbine, with the aim of finding out about their strengths and their weaknesses, as well as in what situations you should be choosing which weapon. Before we begin with the stats of this weapons, quick shout out to Nathan Grimmer for making this very interesting suggestion for today's video. I hope I'm able to answer your questions regarding the comparative performance of these two weapons. But with that being said, let's introduce the first weapon we're going to be talking about today, the Scar H. And I've already done a video on my channel about this gun. I am very much in love with the Scar H. It is one of my favorite weapons to use in Battlefield 4. Nevertheless, a quick stat rundown of the Scar H. With a maximum damage of 33 and a minimum damage of 21.6, we have here a higher damage model weapon. As both of the weapons we're going to be looking at today, it is capable of performing a 4-shot kill. In the case of the Scar H, this is all the way out to 44 meters. The fire rate, respectively, is quite moderate, therefore at 620 rounds per minute, keeping this gun from being an absolute close quarter beast. Something like a Bulldog is, of course, much more geared towards close quarter, but as we'll discuss later, the Scar H is more directed towards an all-rounder category. The magazine size is gimped, as most higher damage model weapons in Battlefield 4, at 20 plus 1, 21 bullets in total. This is the main hindrance to the performance of this weapon. You're going to have to pay close attention to how many bullets you have in your magazine and how quickly you run out of them. Next up then, we have the reload times. Thankfully, they compensate to a certain extent for the relatively small magazine of this gun, with a very fast short reload, that is with one or more bullets left in your chamber or magazine, at 1.9 seconds, and a relatively good long reload at 2.4 seconds. Reloading the Scar H usually isn't too much of a difficult task. Recoil, of course, is relatively high on this gun, with a vertical recoil of 0.5, not to be underestimated, and recoil both to the left and right balanced out at 0.225. This gun has a serious kick to it. However, in a little bit of a compensatory note, and unlike most weapons which have such high recoil, usually being, of course, close quarter weapons, it has a relatively manageable first shot recoil multiplier at 1.75, meaning that tap firing is possible with this weapon if you have good recoil control. The ADS, or accuracy values, of the Scar H are typical for an assault rifle. That is to say that we have a standard ADS of 0.2 when aiming down sight and not moving, and a standard hip fire while standing and moving value, or I should say better accuracy, of 3.5. With those stats being covered, then let's move on to the Ace 52 CQB, a weapon maybe less people are familiar with. With a maximum damage of 33 and a minimum damage of 18, you once more here have a higher damage model weapon, capable of performing a 4-shot kill all the way out to 30 meters, slipping up to a 5-shot kill after that, and eventually at 45 meters already reaching a 6-shot kill. Unlike the Scar H, this weapon does not perform an all-range 5-shot kill, it slips up to 6. The fire rate is higher than the Scar H at 650 rounds per minute, meaning your damage output will be higher if you're hitting all your shots. The magazine size is also slightly bigger at 25 plus 1, that is 26 bullets in total. On the other hand, we have a slightly slower reload here, with a short reload at 2.3 seconds, definitely in the manageable area, and a relatively hefty long reload at 3.4 seconds. With this gun, you are going to have to try to avoid to hit that long reload, because a 3.4 second reload can most definitely get you killed in close quarter, which is, of course, where you're going to be using something like this gun, the Ace 52, more frequently than not. The recoil on the Ace 52 CQB is hefty, and I say hefty when comparing it to something like the Scar H, with a vertical recoil of 0.56. This is significantly more recoil than anything you usually would be finding yourself using on the battlefield. This is more recoil than an AEK or even a FAMAS. It's actually closing in on a recoil amount that you would get if you would use the FAMAS with a heavy barrel. That is to say, only on the vertical recoil. The recoil side to side, that is left to right horizontal recoil, is also very hefty, especially when comparing to the Scar H at 0.3, but of course not in the league of something like a FAMAS. First shot recoil multiplier is also higher at 1.95, slowly moving beyond the range where tap firing, burst firing at longer ranges is possible, yet it's not at the point where I'd say it is absolutely impossible. The accuracy values of the Ace 52 CQB are typical for a carbine, in that they are slightly worse when it comes to the base ADS, that is of course at 0.3 for this weapon, however slightly better than assault rifles in their hip fire, with 2.5 for hip firing, standing and moving simultaneously. So with these stats of these weapons being covered, how do I like to run them? What attachments should you be using, at least in my opinion, with the Scar H and Ace 52 CQB? Starting off then with the Scar H, a standard red dot optic should suffice. Your personal preference is of course here the right choice. In my case, it's going to be a Coyote RDS. Accessory, we always have this discussion, we always will. Laser sight or no laser sight, a matter of training, combat situation, and whether or not you're able to turn it off or on in the right situations. The choice once more here is yours. Barrel attachment for me is always going to be a compensator for the Scar H, very much because it allows me to extend the combat efficient range of this gun from medium range and close quarter all the way up to long range, or at least make it easier to hit long range targets. Why? Because of course that the side-to-side recoil of the Scar H is equal, it's very difficult to compensate for. What the compensator does, it just simply decreases these 0.225 to a lesser value, making it easier to hit longer range targets. A suppressor may be an option for close quarter, and for those of you struggling extremely with the high vertical recoil, I may recommend something like a muzzle brake, but if you possibly can, you should always be going for a compensator over a muzzle brake, unless of course your weapon has no side-to-side recoil. Vertical recoil will and always is easier to control and combat than side-to-side recoil. Moving on to the underbarrel attachments, here we have a few more viable options. I personally can deal with the recoil of the Scar H even on its first shot kick. That is to say, I use a vertical grip on my Scar H and still have no trouble shooting at longer ranges and tap firing it. This will not apply to all. Those of you that want to tap fire the Scar H a lot at longer ranges and don't have too good vertical recoil control may want not to put up with such a high first shot recoil multiplier. And I say first high shot kick of the weapon, not because the first shot high recoil multiplier is necessarily very high, it's mediocre. But if you multiply an already high vertical recoil by a normal recoil multiplier, you end up with a high first shot kick. Nevertheless, in this case, it's actually almost 1 degree, because of course you have 0.5 times 1.75. Do the math for yourself. So an angled foregrip may be an option here as well. However, in my opinion, the vertical grip, if you can control the recoil, is the better choice, allowing you to strafe more at longer ranges to make yourself a harder target, making your hip fire more accurate, and you generally a more mobile player, making this weapon better at close quarter, where it's already competent. However, it is not quite matched for something like an AEK or FAMAS. Moving on then to the Ace 52 CQB. This weapon is different but similar to the Scar H, and that of course it may have similar stats, but it's run differently because it's meant for a different engagement distance. Once more, however, we're going to have an RDS of your choice, Coyote. In my case, once more, it's going to be a laser sight or not, depending on your choice. Once more, barrel attachment could be a compensator if you're trying to extend the range of this gun. However, I find this gun very difficult to control at long range, so if you're using a compensator, it's just going to be to make it easier to control at medium range. A muzzle brake would make a little bit more sense on this weapon than it would on the Scar H because of its higher vertical recoil even than the Scar H, but I would still go for a compensator if you're going for that. If you're going for close quarter exclusive combat, in my opinion, the easiest situation to use the Ace 52 CQB on, something like TDM, then you're going to want to run a suppressor. The problem with this is, of course, that this decreases your already miserable muzzle velocity even further, all the way down to 290 meters per second. It may feel like you're shooting in slow motion at this point, especially if you're coming back from Battlefield 1, where you've been using a sniper rifle shooting at over 800 meters a second, clearly almost 3 times faster than this gun. Just be aware of your slow muzzle velocity if you're using a suppressor in close quarter and trying to shoot at medium range targets. Moving, you may have to lead more than expected. For somebody right in front of you, of course, it makes little difference. The underbarrel attachment, you could go 2 ways here. You can go for a recoil decrease on your vertical recoil, that is using a folding grip or angled foregrip, or you could go for a vertical grip. Now, I actually went for an angled foregrip in this case, not because necessarily this makes the most sense for close quarter situations, because you should try to take something like a vertical grip over it for close quarter, but more widely seen, this allows me to try and at least tap fire this weapon at medium range, because it decreases my first shot recoil multiplier, which is much heftier on this weapon than it is on the other weapon, the Scar H, because of course the Scar H not only has a lesser first shot recoil multiplier, but lesser recoil as per se to be multiplied. So the choice here very much is yours. Exclusive close quarter, you may want to go for something like a vertical grip, make this weapon even more accurate at moving while shooting and hip firing, which is of course the advantage of using a carbine in close quarter combat over an assault rifle. However, if you're trying to tickle out a little bit of medium range combat out of this weapon, I would recommend that you go with something like a folding grip or angled foregrip. With that being said, let's conclude this video. Obviously, the Scar H is the more versatile weapon of the two. However, the Ace 52 CQB will beat out the Scar H in close quarter combat. Not by a lot, but by enough to make a noticeable difference. There is a noticeable difference in the magazine size of these two weapons. There's a noticeable difference in the accuracy while moving or hip firing of these weapons, and there is a fire rate difference, all benefiting the Ace 52 CQB in close quarter combat. However, at medium to long range, the Scar's lower fire rate makes its lower recoil even easier to control than the Ace 52 CQB, and its lower first shot recoil multiplier allows for more accurate, more precise tap firing, as well as its increased accuracy as, of course, an assault rifle versus a carbine. So if you're looking for the versatile weapon here, the easier of the two to use, not to say that any of these weapons are easy to use if you have difficulties controlling recoil, definitely the Scar H should be your choice. If you're looking for a TDM weapon and trying to find out something new, the Scar H will do and suffice as well, but the Ace 52 is probably your better choice. With that being said, though, I'd like to thank you very much for watching at this point in the video. I apologize for my voice. I still am not well. I still have, of course, a very much screwed up voice, and it's why this video didn't come out yesterday, because I didn't have any voice yesterday. You would have just heard me hissing and whistling at the microphone. I literally couldn't pronounce most words that I would need for a commentary, and as such, this video got delayed. I'm sorry about that. Nevertheless, here it is today. I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next Battlefield 4 video.